Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. 41 million Americans are about to lose federally funded food benefits, including 5.5 million Californians. State Attorney General Rob Bonta has joined with 23 other Democratic attorneys general and 3 Democratic governors in suing the administration. KPBS reporter John Carroll says their lawsuit demands the funds be restored immediately.
What the Trump administration is doing is illegal. The federal government has a legal obligation to provide SNAP payments to those who meet program eligibility requirements.
California Attorney General Rob Bonta minced no words in a Tuesday news conference. He accused the Trump administration of blatant cruelty in announcing early this month that SNAP benefits would be cut as of November 1st. In California, those benefits are administered under the Cal Fresh program. Bonta says until a few weeks ago, the administration was prepared to continue those benefits.
On October 1st, once the shutdown had begun, USDA sent state agencies a letter directing them to continue administering SNAP, including processing new applications and preparing November's benefits.
Bonta says 9 days later, USDA sent another letter saying there wouldn't be enough funds for November benefits, even though the agency has $6 billion in contingency funds for unforeseen emergencies. Along with the basic issue of people having enough to eat and the health effects on people, especially children, going hungry, Bonta says the withholding of benefits will have ripple effects on the economy.
In California, we're talking about 26,600 grocers, farmers markets, and other businesses that accept SNAP payments. USDA itself has estimated that every $1 in SNAP benefits generates more than $1.50 in economic activity.
Bonta was surrounded by California Health and Human Services Secretary Kim Johnson and Governor Gavin Newsom. The governor recently admitted he was considering a presidential run in 2028, and he didn't miss the opportunity to lash out at the administration.
I mean, enough of this. Cruelty is the policy. That's what this is about. It's intentional cruelty, intentionally creating anxiety.
Newsom says the state is accelerating $80 million to food banks across the state to try and cushion the blow. Bonta says the lawsuit contains a request for a temporary restraining order that, if approved by the court, would force the USDA to use those $6 billion of contingency funding to keep SNAP going, at least through November. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Today, just days after the San Diego County District Attorney filed criminal charges against Poway City Councilman Tony Blaine, there was a rally by people behind an effort to recall him. They told KPBS North County reporter Alexander Wen that despite the charges, residents should still vote in next week's special election.
At this corner of Espala and Valle Verde, these people are rallying to get out the vote to recall council member Tony Blaine.
I saw Tony in action, and I was very disappointed.
Hume says he attended a council meeting earlier this year and saw Blaine make baseless accusations against the city.
It's very disappointing that we can have someone on the council with no integrity.
After that, Hume says he decided to join the Recall Tony Blaine committee. Since then, Blaine's troubles have mounted. He was censured by the council in February and sued by the city in April to stop him from destroying public records. On Friday, the district attorney's office charged him with 4 felonies and a misdemeanor.
These are very serious charges. Felony perjury, felony bribery, felony destruction of records. He has no business being in office.
It's unusual for the DA to charge someone this close to an election, but Poway Mayor Steve Oz says the charges are appropriate.
They were well-deserved, and the timing is what it is.
Blaine is an Army Reserve doctor, and he's currently deployed in the Balkans.
It's highly likely that he'll just be returned from the deployed environment so that he can attend whatever civilian proceedings he needs to attend.
Steph Craw is a former attorney with the Judge Advocate General Corps. Now she's a civilian defense attorney for military members.
In the 15 years that I've been doing this, government shutdowns or not, I've never had a client who's been unable to return from a deployed environment to appear in a court proceeding.
She says the Army has a system called flagging that will restrict Blaine's movement while deployed.
Tony Blaine still has some supporters left in Poway, as evidenced by these Tony Blaine for Mayor signs.
It's a two-edged sword. When that indictment came down, I thought, oh, are people going to think my vote doesn't matter anymore? It does matter.
Blaine directed all inquiries to his lawyer, who did not return multiple calls for comments. He is expected to be arraigned next Monday, and the election is Tuesday. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
California's special election is 1 week away. Coming up, how state officials are reacting to federal election monitors being sent to polling places.
Well, as we look ahead tonight, we're dropping down to the mid-50s, mostly clear skies. The heat, though, that is still an issue as we head into tomorrow. I'll tell you when a cool down is on the way and what else we have going on, because there are a few other weather factors that I'll be taking a look at.
The San Diego City Council today approved a series of increases to water and sewer rates. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says the rate hikes were scaled back due to affordability concerns.
San Diego has made big investments in water quality and reliability in recent years. The city's water recycling plant will provide a virtually drought-proof water supply in a future where water scarcity will become more prevalent. But rising energy and labor costs have made that infrastructure much more expensive, and the bills are coming due. The proposal was for 4 consecutive rate hikes starting in January that would have raised the cost of water by almost 63%. Instead, the council approved only 2 years of water rate hikes, hoping that the situation will change by 2028. Councilmember Stephen Whitburn said the consequences of not approving any rate hikes would be layoffs and a default on the city's debt.
We owe our residents good customer service. We can't go back to an hour-long wait for the next available representative. And if we default on the city's debt, it would be awful for San Diego's reputation. It would drive up the cost of borrowing money, and it would result in even higher water rates in the future.
As tough as the rate hikes were to stomach, city staff said they could have been much worse. The city is already deferring some maintenance projects, drawing down on its reserves, and leasing some of its land to generate extra revenue. Councilmember Sean Ela Rivera said that's something he wants to see more of, like putting solar panels on top of city reservoirs.
With the amount of property we own, it's difficult for me to imagine that there isn't any opportunity there, and every dollar generated through that could again be used to support working families and add to the supply of clean energy in this region. So a win-win.
It's unclear whether the city's water costs will stabilize after the 2 years of rate increases. In the long term, climate change will likely make water more scarce and more expensive. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Thousands of law enforcement personnel from across San Diego County joined the funeral procession for a La Mesa police officer this morning. Dozens of officers stood along the overpass on the 125 freeway saluting as the procession made its way below. Officer Lauren Craven was hit by a car and killed after responding to a crash on the 8 freeway last week. Our media partner KGTV spoke to a sheriff's deputy who says this is the second procession she's attended for a fallen officer. The first was for police officer Austin Machatar, who died in the line of duty in August of 2024.
I didn't know Lauren personally, but I obviously knew a bunch of people that knew of her and were friends with her, and, you know, it just brought back a bunch of emotions and memories from, you know, when we lost Austin, and it sucks because we do always lose the good ones too soon. Obviously, we know, like, what we signed up with when we joined this career, but, you know, you still never expect it to happen to, like, a friend or someone you know.
The motorcade made its way to Skyline Church in Rancho San Diego, where Craven's funeral was held. The cheapest housing option in San Diego has long been dorm-style rooms, but they're rapidly disappearing, and the city can't seem to turn that around. In part 2 of this two-part feature, KPBS reporter Katie Hyson looks at why.
Well into the 20th century, single-room occupancies, or SROs, were widely available in big cities. Think dorm rooms, about the size of a one-car garage, often with shared kitchens and bathrooms. But by the 1960s, public opinion began to turn. Stacy Livingston is a researcher for UC San Diego's homelessness hub.
SROs had a real negative connotation. They were seen as housing that essentially like outsiders lived in, transients, folks who didn't want to work, folks who didn't want to get married.
Society labeled SROs a blight. When cities started pushing for urban renewal, they destroyed SRO buildings. Livingston says when San Diego revitalized Horton Plaza and the Gas Lamp Quarter in the 80s, it lost a quarter of its SROs at once. People were pushed out of SROs and onto the street. The so-called blight of poverty became even more visible. It was a wake-up call for the city. Council members passed an emergency ordinance in the 80s to try to preserve the SRO buildings that remained. It didn't work. By 2002, there were only 110 SRO buildings left. Research shows by 2023, that had dropped to just 35. And the city's homeless population had grown to more than 6,500 people. Livingston says the legacy of SRO stereotypes remains today.
There are ideas that these are people living with substance use issues. There are ideas that these are people who don't really want to work or have a family, that are disconnected from traditional work and family roles. These are deeply historical stereotypes, and they really don't reflect the reality of who's living in SROs in San Diego.
She says most SRO occupants are seniors and people with disabilities who live on fixed incomes, people leaving homelessness, and the minimum wage workers who keep downtown running. In the current housing affordability crisis, the city has prioritized SROs again. Mayor Todd Gloria introduced incentives for developers to build more of them. Projects that include SROs can win exemptions from certain zoning restrictions. But a city spokesperson says since those incentives passed 2 years ago, the number of new SRO units permitted is 0. I asked a local developer, Sohel Nakshab, why he thinks those incentives haven't worked yet.
I think the question you should be asking is more, is it affordable to develop anything right now? Costs are just astronomically out the roof for construction, materials, and labor. Interest rates are high. Land prices are out the roof, too.
A few years ago, Nakshab built micro apartments in the East Village. They're about the same size as SROs. He rents them for about $1,800 a month. Still, he says he can't even justify a project like that anymore.
If I were to build that building today, it's going to cost me 30 or 40% more than it did 3 years ago. That's a crazy hike in cost.
And forget about developers renting them at SRO rates.
They would need to go more market rate so they can survive. I mean, they've taken all this risk, they've put up all this equity, they've got investors that they have to answer to.
He says to make SROs appealing to build, the city would need to offer even more drastic incentives. No development or permit fees, even less regulation. Renovating existing SRO buildings can also be unprofitable. They tend to be about a century old. So renovation costs are high, but rent is low. Colin Miller is the vice president of real estate for the San Diego Housing Commission.
The developer will say, look, it will cost us more to renovate this building than to tear it down and build something newer, bigger, and denser.
And with higher rents. The commission wants to try a new tactic. They pitched the city council to create an affordable housing preservation fund. The council will vote on it later this fall. It would pull together government dollars and private donations to buy up properties and keep their rents affordable for the long term. The city has been trying a slew of strategies to encourage more affordable housing, fast-tracking permits, creating new incentives, funding construction directly. It is working to increase housing stock, but units the city deems affordable can rent for more than $2,000 a month, twice the rent of a typical SRO, putting them out of reach for many who have nowhere else to go. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
It's been 3 months since the city of San Diego started clearing homeless encampments near downtown freeways. An agreement with the California Department of Transportation allows city crews to go onto state property, allowing 5 miles of freeway. Well, as of today, the city says crews have cleaned up 184 encampments since July, and outreach workers have connected 43 people to shelter and 37 people to other services. San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria says city staff are able to make frequent offers of help.
And while not everyone accepts those services, many do, and that helps address the situation. And for those who say no, we're right back the next day to repeat that conversation again. Over time, what you find is that people either accept the services or they move on. Either way, the encampment is addressed, and we get the result that we want, which is to reduce the unsafe camping situations along our high-speed freeways.
Gloria says building more housing and providing emergency rental assistance are key to keeping people off the streets. San Diego's agreement with Caltrans lasts for 1 year.
I'm Amna Navaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, Hurricane Melissa strikes an enormous blow on Jamaica. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The Trump administration's Department of Justice is sending election monitors to California for next week's election. And as Ashley Zavala reports, state officials say they will be keeping an eye on them.
Poll watchers, the latest point of contention between Republicans and Democrats ahead of Election Day in California. On a virtual press conference with voting rights advocates, Attorney General Rob Bonta on Monday acknowledged the U.S. Department of Justice sending election monitors would be standard operating procedure, but said these are not normal times.
It is a concern. And of course, there will be observers of the election monitors, so-called election monitors that the DOJ is sending.
The Attorney General could not say who the state is using specifically to keep an eye on the DOJ monitors, saying that's to be determined. The Trump administration's monitors are coming at the request of the California Republican Party, who pointed to specific issues in some counties. In a letter, California Republican Party Chairwoman Corinne Rankin told Harmeet Dillon, the leader of the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, that the issues include duplicate ballots being sent in Riverside, past inconsistencies when it comes to the ballot curing deadline in Fresno, and concerns with voter rolls and list maintenance in Orange and Los Angeles counties. Neither Rankin nor Dillon were available for an interview Monday. I asked Bonta about those specific concerns.
I guess issues that don't require the monitors in your perspective.
I don't think they require the monitors. And look who's saying this. It's the Republican Party. It's a party that has subscribed to a conspiracy about the 2020 elections with no proof, with no evidence, with no facts, with no data to back it. Trump continues to say that he won the 2020 election. It's insane. It is crazy. It is not true, and it is dangerous.
And that was Ashley Zavala reporting. For more on the statewide special election, you can check out the KPBS Voter Hub. We have information on Prop 50, including an interactive map showing how your congressional district might change if it passes. You can find a link on the Voter Hub on our homepage or go to kpbs.org/vote. Palisades Charter High School was severely damaged in Los Angeles County's January wildfires. And since April, thousands of the school's students are back to in-person learning, but in a location that was once used for shopping, not studying. Maribel Gonzalez takes us back to school in Santa Monica.
From Sears to a school, this building is now a place of learning for thousands of students after their school burned in the January wildfires. This is Palisades Charter High School, a campus so iconic that movies including Carrie and Freaky Friday were filmed there. Today, campus is closed after about 40% of it was damaged in the Palisades fire.
classrooms needed to be stripped down. Even the ones that survived and that weren't damaged in the fire, they were damaged by smoke.
Pali High Principal Pam McGee said getting kids back to class took priority.
We had been a school of 3,000. Lots of folks were displaced, so we found ourselves with more like 2,500 students.
Up for rent, this closed Sears department store first built in the 1940s.
It's not ideal. It doesn't have walls to the ceiling. It doesn't have doors. We're missing a lot, but we made it work.
We don't have many windows in the classrooms, but it's still the same classmates, still the same teachers.
The Palisades fire destroyed more than 6,800 structures in January.
At least a quarter of my baseball team lost their homes.
Uprooting families across Southern California.
I lost my home. My 2 boys were born in there. We've lost that, but now we've got an opportunity. We're going to try to rebuild.
But some students say what the blaze could not destroy is their sense of community.
I think people are now so much closer together and they can bond over something.
The Pali High community is hoping construction will be complete on its home campus by January of next year.
I think the kids are learning that not everything's perfect, and we will be here to teach you no matter what that looks like.
I'm Maribel Gonzalez reporting.
Well, the heat is on, and that continues through the day on Wednesday. We'll take a look at the advisories in just a minute here. But the other thing we have going on, especially from the mountains downsloping, 25 to 35 mile per hour Santa Ana winds. This is a little bit better compared to what we've been dealing with today, but just know that that does continue. We're not talking about a super elevated fire danger, but anytime we have those stronger wind gusts, well, it's always something to keep in mind. Looking ahead to next week, even the weekend, some of us start to see a little bit of a cooling trend. So if you're sick of the heat, there is something to look forward to. Here are the heat advisories that I was talking about. These go through 7 p.m. Wednesday. They've been in effect for a lot of Tuesday as well. Overall, we look at tonight. Well, we're at 47 in Oceanside, 56 for San Diego, 49 there in Mount Laguna. Clear skies across the board. Nobody really dealing with the overnight low clouds. Those do return later into the week, though. We look ahead to tomorrow. Some cloudy skies along the coast. Chula Vista at 84 degrees. We're in the 90s in El Cajon. 66 for Mount Laguna. Mostly clear skies across the board here as well. Go ahead and taking a look at our extended forecast here along the coast. Well, do you see the cooling trend I was talking about? There it is. We bounce around a little bit. There's certainly a little bit of a roller coaster ride going on. 83 for your Wednesday, down to 73 by Friday, 75 by Sunday. But hey, we'll take it. We're out of the 80s by Thursday. Further inland, well, we're in the 90s Wednesday, but we get down to 81 by the time we get to Saturday. Only warming up a few degrees for your Sunday overall. We take a look at our mountain outlook. These are some of the areas. Got to start thinking about the Santa Ana winds, even some inland areas as well. We're in the 60s really across the board here. Now, this is the outlier. We actually warm up 10 degrees from Saturday to Sunday, but plenty of sunshine to look forward to. Take a look at that low on Saturday. We're down into the mid-30s. Definitely want to bundle up if you're heading out and about first thing. In our desert region, we're in the 90s through Friday. Then briefly, we get out of the 90s Saturday, 92 for your Sunday. So again, a little bit of a roller coaster, but not as much variation here. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather's Anna Azalian.
Wireless messages we send through the airwaves should be encrypted, but some are not. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge tells us about a lot of satellite transmissions that were shockingly easy to intercept by UC San Diego researchers.
You can't see them, but up in the sky, about 30,000 miles from San Diego, there are dozens of satellites. They are needed to transfer important data that includes cell phone calls and codes that allow remote control of important infrastructure.
But the signal's also able to be picked up anywhere. In particular, we could pick it up just by pointing our dish up here in San Diego.
Here on the roof of the computer science building at UCSD is a satellite dish that was receiving a lot of messages that were not encrypted. An encrypted message has been turned into code, making it unintelligible to unintended users. The satellite dish on the roof is nothing fancy, an over-the-shelf product you could buy for less than $1,000. Some UC San Diego professors, in cahoots with partners at the University of Maryland, analyzed the messages they intercepted. Computer science professor Aaron Schulman said he was kind of shocked.
And we realized very quickly we had to change the course of our project. Our scientific goal was to make sure encryption was used well, and now we're like, wait, there was no encryption. So we actually had to go in and analyze that traffic we saw unencrypted and just figure out who this is and report to them so they can get it turned off.
The unencrypted messages included sensitive commercial information and even people calling to speak with their doctors and lawyers. Schulman says they got messages from a Mexican military surveillance system that kept track of ships on the water. He said a lot of U.S. Navy communications they got were encrypted, but some were not, enough to reveal that they were Navy ships.
You know, deploying encryption takes some work, but it is clearly doable because every phone, every web browser, every laptop computer, Wi-Fi networks are encrypted. So this is a pervasive thing. And so to not have it be universal for satellite communications is quite surprising.
Henninger says phone calls in urban areas routed through cell phone towers remain encrypted, but she says in remote areas, cell phone towers have to relay the signal to a satellite where the encryption can be stripped before it reaches the person being called. The good news, says Schulman, is when they told companies and governments their communications were intercepted and not encrypted, they fixed the problem.
Depending on the organization, some fixed within 24 hours, some took a few weeks, but indeed they realized this was very real, very quickly, and unfortunately I think a lot of them also realized that this is ultra sensitive traffic.
The research group published a paper on their findings for a computer security conference in Taiwan. The headline of their paper on clear satellite communications was, "Don't Look Up." Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
Look for tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.